Hello, Corky Alexander here. Good Alabama morning to you. It's hot and sticky here. Just had a big rain. Um, I'm living here in Northwest Alabama, and I've lived in Tennessee for a number of years, Georgia, North Carolina. I've also lived in Rhode Island. Uh, I lived in South Dakota. I lived in Oklahoma. So moved around a bit. Uh, I want to talk about attack on the guitar. I think this is a proper word to use because the word uh, seems to suggest what I'm talking about. So this is going to be a talking video referring to different things. If you live in the American South, and I lived in Georgia for years, and I lived in Tennessee for years, but until you live in Alabama and or Mississippi, it doesn't become as clear to you till you get down here that this is the cradle of American music. Now, I know people would say there are blues men that lived in Georgia. That's true. And some of them went to record in Atlanta. There are important bluesmen lived in Chicago, but they went there to record. Most of them were raised in Alabama, Mississippi, down around here, some Louisiana. Even the pop players like James Burton, he's from Shreveport, Mississippi. So even the coastal areas, is cradle of American music. So that all music in America, jazz, rock, folk, stems from the South, soul, blues. And so living down here, it becomes increasingly clear. I just did a Wikipedia search yesterday for Big Mama Thornton. I had never seen her sing live, and I saw her on a YouTube video, and she's from Alabama. So it continues to be a thing. And I did Delta Blues tours for a number of years. I don't know if I'll ever get to do another one. Nobody seems to be able to get off work to come do it. But anyway, being down here, it's all about where you are. And whereas in North Carolina and Georgia, you had to search for music history, recognition. Down here, it's not a problem. It's everywhere. Every little town you go into, they'll have. Like I go through a town to go to Tupelo, and it's Tammy Wynette's town, and it's all over the signs and everything. So, but I want to talk about attack on the guitar, and I want to pose this, and I base this on a problem that all young people have when they're learning the guitar, and that is their parents, in my case, my father, looked at me one day and said, "Can you play a whole song?" Because for us, especially raised up in the 50s and 60s, riffs and licks were what we were excited about. And so they were all pretty new. They were just coming out. A lot of guitar riffs created during that time. And we were just enamored with being able to pop off, a lick or a riff. And we weren't trying to be, Henry Mancini, or we weren't trying to be, the kid at high school music class learning, the whole song on the horn or whatever. But we had to go back and get that. it became a nagging thing for us uh, when we didn't have a band, that we couldn't just sit down with the guitar and play a whole song by ourselves. We could strum the chords to it and maybe sing it, but we were interested in, chord formations, chord progressions, and learning all that. So, in order for this to happen, you've got to have a sense of attack on the guitar. In other words, when you're moving from one thing to another, you got to get there quick. Your fingers have got to get to the position before you pick the note out. And, we would see these great guitar players like Johnny Winter in particular, or, other great guitar players, Jimi Hendrix. And a lot of times on the recording, we're not really hearing the bass or drums or any backup. It's just that guitar. And what this reveals is that they're moving pretty fast. They're not, waiting to form their fingers. When you're in a band, you can get kind of lazy because they're carrying the rhythm section, and then you've got time to get to your lick. And if it's in blues, maybe even you can wait till the next turnaround. But at any rate, so at some point, and this is probably an intermediate guitar discussion, because beginners are just learning their chords and scales and learning how to play, strum, things like that. But given that you're already strumming, you're already picking out things, scales and things like that. But it doesn't matter how awesome you get in being able to reproduce a tablature if you can't play the thing on beat and play the whole song. Okay? Especially if you're going to have to do any solo music, like I have. Not a good singer, but yet I'd be invited to play at a restaurant or a hospital or something, or a nursing home, or veterans outfit. I got to be able to capture a song and be my own band. And I'm not talking about using drum machines and tracks, although there comes a time for tracks and they work okay. I'm talking about having, in many cases, an acoustic guitar on your knee and playing a song. Now, one of the first times that I had to do this was a guy from Alabama came to Tennessee to attend theological seminary. He went to seminary with my wife, and she invited him over to the house for dinner. He taught us then about buttermilk pie. I remember that. And then he sat down to teach me Lonesome Fiddler Blues, a bluegrass song on the acoustic guitar. Now, this song involves both chords and picking out the melody. Now that I reflect back on it, it really reminds me a lot of Doc Watson's style. Doc Watson was another one of those guys who could pick out a song, the melody, and then do the chords in between, and it was wonderful. And I was privileged to get to see Doc Watson 3 times. One time in a grocery store, I think. I didn't really know who he was then, Boone, North Carolina. My friend said he was in there, and we looked, and then 2 times live in Knoxville. And he's ideal for this. And then I joined the Chet Atkins Society. And when I was in the Chet Atkins Society, I'd get to go to Nashville to the Music City Sheraton and see Chet with a relatively small number of people, and see all the guitarists that he was featuring, and began to focus on Chet Atkins music. Chet Atkins is special because his entire career was based on picking out a song, melody, and chords, playing them at the same time, not really needing a bass or drums or any keyboard or anything behind him. And so, if you learn any Chet Atkins songs, that's going to build your uh, propensity to have a good attack, because you got to move on. You can't wait for that chord to ring out. You got to be moving, and your thumb is going to hit the bass and a chord like the left hand of a piano, and then your at least your two fingers. I'm trying to get my fingers. There they are. There they are. These two fingers picking out the melody. So you do that. I'm not great at that, but I can do some songs and I can fake it. And what I mean by faking it is I may not be perfectly to the tablature, perfectly to every single note, but I've got the gist of it so that the people say, well, he played a whole song. Okay. And since then, I've taken songs like Yesterday by the Beatles and a lot of gospel hymns, and it resulted in a whole album of hymns that I did. You can get it on YouTube, I think. It's kind of fell off Spotify, called Gospel Guitar, and in that, they're all just instrumental acoustic hymns that I picked the melody and the chords out. Great is Thy faithfulness, O rugged cross, so forth, so on. So you got to get to this, not because you want to be noted for that. I mean, you can be a hot rock lead guitar player, but I was watching Zach Wild the other day, and I don't follow him too much, but he's known to be a real shredder, but he's doing a real down home instrumental guitar by himself on a stool in a music store. And this is what you got to be able to do. You got to be able to play these songs. You got to get interested in chord progressions. You got to be able to modulate into a different key if necessary for your ability to pick the melody and make it sound. This is another big part of it is, what key am I going to do this in? Well, it's easier to do it here. Some songs are just suited for certain keys, like Freight Train, the old blues number by Elizabeth Cotton, Freight Train, just fitted for the key of C. And I know a lot of people believe that the Wildwood Flower by the Carter Family is suited for C, and they did it in C, but I happen to do it in G for my own reasons. You got to be able to make those decisions and get to it. You got to get to it. You can't be sitting there fumbling around trying to, form your chords. You got to know where you're going before you go there. And so your attack, I need you to get excited about this because you're going to be playing in front of people and you don't want a lot of stuttering. It's okay to stutter every now and then, but you need to be able to play this music and you need to be able to play a whole song and on tempo and get to it, no matter how simple the first one you do is. But practice it until you can play the whole thing. And I'm telling you, the country blues out of the Mississippi Delta, like Mississippi John Hurt and those guys, that acoustic country blues are some of the hardest things I learned. But I forced myself to learn them because I would not live until I could play those songs, and I drove my family crazy with them. My kids still say, "Oh God, Daddy, I heard you play that in the house so many times." But I encourage you to work on your attack. I'll say more about it later. Have a blessed day.